Well, I'm about a month away from having baby number 4. He's due on like the 18th or something. We'll see if he shows up early. And we're living in about 1,000 square feet, if you don't know. So I've got 3 other kids sharing a room, 7, 5, 1.5. And it's 1,000 square foot house. Thankfully, winter seems like summer this year. And so we've had a lot of outdoor time. But still, there's toys everywhere. Laundry is, of course, constant. I'm sure you know if you have a bunch of kids. And I'm thinking about where to put the extra stuff that a fourth kid, another baby, is going to bring into our house, right? We'll figure it out. We're also starting seeds for the spring. That's fun, but a mess. And we're trying to buy a ranch in Texas. We found one that we really like. We'll see if it works out or not. But every single part of life requires work. It requires paperwork. It requires planning for seedlings. It requires sacrifice. And it requires responsibility, right? I can't really think of many things about adulthood that are passive. And so that's when I I opened up X this week, and the national conversation, I'm sure you can guess what it is. It's about whether asking adults to prove their citizenship in order to vote is somehow oppression. And I just keep coming back to one thought, right? A self-governing republic, which is what we're supposed to be, requires self-governing adults. Is that so hard to imagine? And that's it. That's my thesis today. So let's get into this. Hey everybody, I am JJ Jeffrey, and this is Homestead Republic. And today we are talking about the idea of adults being adults and whether that is oppressive to expect them to be adults, aka the SAVE Act, and how everybody's freaking out about it online. And honestly, it's so repetitive and annoying that I have been staying off the computer this week because I just can't stand arguing with people about this concept that they think is oppressive and I think is just part of your civic duty, proving that you are an American citizen. I mean, pretty easy if you ask me. All right, so the SAVE Act. It's a debate going on right now. It's turned into this emotional firestorm online. I can barely even handle that this is an argument that we have to have right now. The argument from the left is that millions of people are going to be disenfranchised because they can't get identification. That it's too hard for them, that it's unfair, that vulnerable populations will suffer. But to me, I think we need to slow down and ask a more fundamental question. What are we actually saying here? Are we saying that adults are incapable of obtaining their birth certificate or a passport or a state ID? These things are too hard for us to do? Because if we trust someone to choose the leaders of the most powerful government on earth, shouldn't we trust them to be able to handle the basic administrative task of proving who they are? I think that seems pretty reasonable, even if it costs $15. I mean, do we really have that many people who can't afford $15 in this country? I sure as hell hope not. I mean, it's a simple thing. It's not about cruelty. It's about a civic expectation that's required of you to live in this republic. There's no part of my life that functions without some sort of documentation, right? I mean, I can't fly without an ID. I can't buy land without filling out a bunch of paperwork. I can't register a vehicle. I can't open certain accounts, bank accounts, for instance. I can't even enroll my kids in a summer camp without the right documentation, right? So why is this so hard? It's just because it's a step that people don't want to take. You know, if I showed up at the hospital to give birth, I'm having a home birth, but if I did and I didn't have any identification and I just said, please take my word for it, I mean, eventually they're going to want some identification. They want to know who I am. They need to know a name. They need to know information. I have to show them my ID. I have to show them that I have insurance or who to bill. Otherwise, I just get a bill in the mail. And then who deals with that? I mean, we expect people to deal with that kind of thing, and that's even harder in my opinion. It's not how civilization works. Just making things easy for everybody. Life's tough. There's bureaucratic nonsense that you've got to deal with. So why is voting the one area where we pretend that responsibility is oppressive? It's not oppression. We just have to throw that word around everywhere as if it's what everybody's trying to do to everybody else all the time. And honestly, there's something that bothers me even more deeply about the whole framing of this, and it's because it deals with women and minorities, and somehow we can't navigate basic bureaucratic systems. It's this soft bigotry, which the left hates for me to say, but it's a soft bigotry of low expectations. You're a bigot if you think people are incompetent and helpless. And that's what you're saying about women and minorities right now. That we're incompetent and helpless and that you have low expectations of us. And that's just a dirty lie. It's just a dirty lie. You're just using it because you don't want the SAVE Act to pass. So you're using us. It's disgusting. Oh, it makes me so infuriated. Anyways, I don't want to live in a country that believes my daughters are too fragile and too incapable to obtain identification. I sure as hell hope my daughters can do that by themselves when they're adults. Right? Maybe I'll even start teaching them to do it now. I want to live in a country that believes that my kids are competent, that they're capable, and that they're sovereign individuals who can handle their own shit. Because voting might be a right, but it's also an act of stewardship for our country. And stewardship's a word I understand pretty deeply running a homestead, being a mom. You don't steward land passively. I mean, we're about to plant seeds. It takes a lot. I hear all these people saying, if shit hits the fan, at least I've got seeds and I'll figure out how to grow them. No, you won't. If you've never grown seeds before and started plants from seeds, you're going to kill them all and your family is going to die. You have to practice and get good at these things. And you have to actually do them. You can't expect other people to do them. Sure, you can buy seedlings right now, but that doesn't mean in the future that you'll be able to. Figure out how to do it yourself. And taking away that independence of being able to do things yourselves is kind of what we're doing here by saying, well, we should give everybody free IDs. How about making people do some work to be stewards for their country? If I just scatter seeds in the garden, maybe a few will pop up. But it's a lot more difficult than that. I got to pay attention all the time. My favorite quote is, if you want a good garden, your shadow is the best fertilizer. AKA, you're there all the time working at it. Stewardship requires intention, protection, and effort. The same is true with children. The same is true with property. The same is true with our republic. It's not just a vibe. It's not just a demographic label that, oh, you're a citizen, here you go. That's all for you. It's a legal and civic status that requires duties. Get that? Can you think of any, perhaps? Maybe jury duty? Do we require people to do that? Yeah. They have to figure out how to get there too. They have to not be at their job for a day or more. What about taxes? Should we just do everybody's taxes for them? They're a pain in the butt. They suck. They're not easy to do. I mean, maybe some of you think they're easy. I think they're really convoluted. But we expect people to do them. Historically, there's even drafts. Is that not some sort of huge responsibility that we as citizens have to take on? I think that figuring out how to get an ID is easier than jury duty, taxes, and being drafted. Maybe I'm wrong. But to me, that was a lot easier. Getting a passport, getting my kids' birth certificates, a lot easier. And yet we are trying to take that expectation away from people because it's too big of a responsibility. You can tell I'm frustrated, I'm sure. So when we talk about voter ID or proof of citizenship, we're not talking about some sort of cruelty, right? We're talking about the baseline expectation of adulthood. And I think what's underneath the whole debate is something deeper that's happening in culture right now. And it's really a big shame. We are increasingly, as a culture, uncomfortable with expecting adulthood from adults. The youth today who are adults are nothing like they used to be. What I think of is, I recently played the book on tape, Old Yeller, for my kids. The kid's something like 12 or 14, and his dad leaves all summer and he's the man of the house. He has to go out and hunt for food for them. He's got to protect them from rabid wolves and rabid bulls and bears trying to attack his little brother. And I don't know any 12 to 14-year-old boy nowadays who could do that at all. But that's how responsibility was back then. Most everybody had responsibilities like that. And we look at people today and their biggest responsibility is, getting off their video game long enough to eat dinner. We want to remove friction from everything in society now. We want to remove effort from everything, make everything easier for us. We want to remove standards so that it makes it easier for certain people to fill positions. We want to remove responsibility. And we're shocked when things fall apart and get weak because we don't have responsible people running them. If somebody says they're going to call me and they don't, that is annoying. And it happens all the time because people are not responsible enough to say that they're going to do something and actually do it. And that's a huge detriment to society. It's really a negative here. I'm bringing my fourth kid into the world here in 4 weeks. And I keep thinking constantly about the kind of country my children are growing up in. Are we raising citizens who believe adulthood is something to rise into? Or are we normalizing a culture of permanent dependency and lowered expectations? I wonder why that would be. Lowered expectations and permanent dependency. Why would the government want us dependent on it? I don't want to raise my kids like that. I want independence, right? I don't know if you can hear them in the background. They're playing on the trampoline. When we talk about moving to Texas, because that's our plan, to leave Colorado and move to Texas, it's not just a political move, although it is slightly political. It's also philosophical. We're trying to build a life that aligns with self-governance, that is about ownership of running our own systems, of responsibility, of raising our children to be capable, right? When you grow up on a ranch and you teach your kids how to take care of animals and how to build and how to work with systems on your own property and help them learn self-sufficiency skills, you might be able to do that in a neighborhood, in a suburb, but not as well as you can on a 100-acre ranch, right? So that's what we're looking to in the future, because we want our kids to grow up not dependent and not with lower expectations of themselves. Our republic's not going to survive on empathy alone. And that's what a lot of people have today. A really big dose of empathy and not a lot else. Empathy matters to a point. Compassion matters to a point, but without competence, without responsibility and expected responsibility, without standards and people knowing how to do things for themselves, some independence, our self-government collapses. And that's what our republic is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the people governing themselves, not these elites governing us. A republic requires grown-ups, adults. And grown-ups should be able to be adults. At 21, you shouldn't just be a child still trying to figure things out. You had enough time to do that. You should be able to run your own home by then, but most people can't. I can't say that I could either at 21. I could barely. I remember when my first roommate moved out, he said, "Do you know that you never once took the garbage out?" He did it every single time. I didn't even notice. I just moved out of my home with my parents. I never took the garbage out. That wasn't my job. My brother might have done it. But I didn't even think about something like that. Or like leaving dirty dishes in the sink and your roommates get pissed off at you or you get mad at them. And there's a lot of responsibility that doesn't get taught at home. And you've got to quickly figure out when you move out. And hopefully you do, or you just expect somebody else to take care of it for you. And that seems like the way our society is sliding. It doesn't mean that everything in our system is perfect. It's so overladen with bureaucracy, right? It doesn't mean that there aren't people who need help navigating things now and again. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't improve access when things are broken and try to fix the problems that there are. I can't say that getting a passport is the simplest process ever, or, I mean, getting a birth certificate is pretty easy, but I mean, the passport was a little harder. There's a lot of steps. You got to read things right, figure out what you need to bring in. But it doesn't mean that we should stop pretending that civic requirements are oppressive. They're not. They're not oppressive. They're just part of being a grown-up. If you care enough to vote, you should care enough to secure your own identification. If you want the privilege of shaping the direction that our country's going, which, I mean, I hope we can point it in the right direction, you should be willing to do the minimum work that proves you're a citizen of it. If you can't, then you don't care enough. I want my daughters to grow up believing that they're capable of at least that. And far more than that, really. I want my sons to grow up believing that responsibility is strength, not some sort of cruelty, right? And I want a culture that calls for adults to move upwards and to be stronger, better people for society. Not one that assumes that people can't rise and just need to be taken care of. That's not the society I want to live in, and that's not the society America is supposed to be. You know, there's a country I want to hand to my children, and I want it to be one where The people in it are strong and independent. And that's why this conversation matters. This SAVE Act conversation. Because it's a division. It's another one of many divisions in our society. And I, for one, think that adults should be able to adult. The end.